convince you to not give a damn about what this cop has to say about his experience trying to stop criminals who were, at the very least, if you don't actually believe that they were trying to murder, Nancy Pelosi or Mike Pence or whatever, we're definitely destroying property and we're threatening people's lives. And we could show you the footage. We'll show you the footage a million times. It doesn't seem to matter. Like, they have spent months trying to tell you, these terrorists weren't that bad. Laura Ingraham last night was like, it wasn't that bad of an attack on the Capitol. Like, it is a major mainstream news channel doing months of PR for, at the very least, criminals. If you don't want to label them terrorists, they're definitely criminals. And that's what they're using their massive billionaire-backed media platform to accomplish. And if they have to smear a few cops along the way, they were black cops, kind of fun for them. This is before he, like, what do you think's gonna happen when he does his testimony, Ben? What are they gonna say that night?
Don't worry, we're gonna have to Brother Dunn. I know you got the support of the U.S. Capitol Police, but the black delegation gonna have a whole lot to say that week, because we are very familiar with the fact and the reality. We are intimately aware of the reality. Had any black person marched up those steps on January 6th, they would have given y'all the same orders to kill us. And so to that end, the white supremacy has shown its face, and it's time for us to respond. It's time for America to respond. Who are you gonna side with? Those folks on January 6th, or the people that we're protesting black lives, and they treat us as if we marched up the steps of the Capitol on January 6th and we were black.
Exactly. Jesus. Okay, we are running low on time, but we're gonna do our last story really fast. We are. Video game studio Activision Blizzard is being sued for a number of different complaints. In general, creating something like a frat-like environment and a sort of persistent system of systemic discrimination against female employees. I want to give you some of the details that are beginning to come out. According to the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, there's a filing on Tuesday of this week. Female employees make up about 20% of the Activision workforce and are subjected to pervasive frat boy workplace culture, including cube crawls, in which male employees drink copious amounts of alcohol as they crawl their way through various cubicles in the office and often engage in inappropriate behavior towards female employees. The agency alleges male employees play video games during the weekday while delegating responsibilities to female employees, engage in sexual banter, and joke openly about rape, among other things. Female employees allege being held back from promotions because of the possibility they might become pregnant, being criticized for leaving to pick up their kids from daycare, and being kicked out of lactation rooms so male colleagues could use the room for meetings. Jesus. The suit also points to a female Activision employee who took her own life while on a company trip with her male supervisor. The employee has been subjected to intense sexual harassment prior to her death, including having nude photos passed around at a company holiday party. Now we're gonna have their reaction to all of this, but this is not a small thing. This is not one employee's experience. It's not about one event or one way that female employees are held back. It seems to, from the description, have reached from regular male employees all the way up to the top, affecting how managers view female employees, the opportunities that are provided to them, the pay that they receive. It seems systemic throughout the company. What do you think, Ben?
I think that this bigotry, this patriarchy, this sexism, all these evils, they're out of control of even capitalism and white men. They to the detriment of their own business, they can't get this thing under control. That blows me away. You guys you're in the position to be worth billions of dollars, and you're in the greatest position of a white man could be in this country, of where a white man could be in this country, and you guys carry on like this on your job. I feel like AOC, if you're a professional, you should be embarrassed carrying yourself like this, but yet they had a culture of it. This stuff is out of control. They don't have any more control over their bigotry than they think they do. It's really destructive.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, this is not a small, Activision Blizzard is not some small studio. They've released some of the biggest games of the past few years. They're not the only studio that's been affected by things like this. There was back in 2018, Riot Games, the makers of League of Legends, had their own investigation that led to lawsuits in this area. There is an incredibly slow, a glacial sort of wave that is passing through the video game space. Much needed. For not only more representation, more diversity, but to fight against sort of active campaign against female employees, to make them feel marginalized, to stop them from reaching the top levels of these companies. It needs to change. These lawsuits are one way that it can change. It is obviously a slow process, and along the way, a lot of people lose out on possibilities for their career. Some people are losing their lives, as is described in this. Activision Blizzard, they put out a statement saying they stop sexual misconduct and harassment. These claims are distorted or untrue. They say all that stuff. Their statement is available. But clearly for many, many female employees, these are very real experiences that they're describing. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have. I know that we're over, but Ben, thank you so much. I know that you have been worked to the bone recently, but thank you for joining us. It's always great to have you on.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, John.
Everybody check out Ben's work, and hope to talk to you soon, man. For those of you at home, thank you for being here. You've got a couple minutes until Indisputable starts. You got Dr. Rashad Richey who's gonna be here in just a few. Reactions is up on Twitch after that. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
Welcome to Indisputable. Good to be with you. We got a lot of show today. I have Dina Doll breaking down news of the day with me, legal analyst, law and crime expert. This is going to be fun. Also, in the bullpen, I have Nate Hochman, who is a conservative commentator and with Citizens Climate Group. We're gonna talk about a lot of things, including critical race theory, education, politics, and maybe even climate. Again, I know we talked climate yesterday, we may do it again today. My top story. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a police officer who has 85 complaints on his record. He was recommended for termination, but instead of termination, he received a promotion. Over 90% of the complaints are actually from African American citizens of Detroit. I kid you not. Let's put his picture up. That's him. His name is Stephen Koo. Sergeant Stephen Koo has been accused of harassing people, threatening black residents for years. This is not something new. It has been on his record. According to one victim of Sergeant Koo, he just said, he's just another stupid N-word, Jay Brown said. Brown filed a citizen complaint against Koo that included allegations he used racist language and unnecessary force. Koo denied both. Now, let me take you back to an incident a few years ago. Koo pulls up to an apartment complex. He gets out of his car, gun drawn, and he says, "Where's the drugs? Are the drugs in the house or are the drugs in your car?" The guy says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he really didn't, because he was the property manager for the property. He didn't know what the hell this cop was talking about. This cop proceeded to still put a gun in his chest, check his vehicle. The guy had no criminal record, no warrants, no drugs, no weapons, no nothing. So after all of this, Koo decides to write him a ticket for not having on his seatbelt, even though when Koo pulled up, he was in the parking lot and did not require to have a seatbelt on, just being petty. Well, in that interaction, Koo called him the N-word. Well, this young man decided to file a complaint. Let me put his picture back up again. The reason why I'm showing his picture multiple times is because the national media has not caught this story yet. We are the first to do this story nationally. I want you to remember his face and his name. Sergeant, not officer, but Sergeant Stephen Koo. Koo has amassed 85, count them ladies and gentlemen, 85 complaints, more than 10 times the department average. It was mind-blowing, frankly, said Julie Hurwitz, an attorney suing Koo and the department today on behalf of a man she says was wrongly shot and arrested. 85. Now, some of you may say, well, I don't really have any context for the number 85. I don't know if that's a high number, if that's part of the job. Are people making up complaints about this individual? Well, it gets deeper. For complainants who identified their race, nearly every one of them, it was over 90%, ladies and gentlemen, were listed as a person of color, according to internal department records. Since he joined the force, Koo has been accused repeatedly of excessive force, using hostile and racist language, and harassing people of color who say their biggest crime was simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Let me give you the breakdown. The average police officer in Detroit will receive eight complaints during the span of their entire career. This individual, Sergeant Stephen Koo, already has 85. Is being sued for an arrest and shooting, and has more complaints that are likely going to be filed now that his face is in the media. Because do you know what it takes for a person being harassed by a cop to actually go and file a complaint? The vast majority of them did not. He got away with this most of the time. That 85 number is the minority number. It gets deeper. Another victim said, he told the other brother, put your hands behind your back. And he was like, this is because of your N-word brother, Fleming recalled. And I was like, whoa. According to Collins' complaint filed with the city, and he and the officers traded insults before Koo ultimately cuffed him and then made a threat. Well, what was that threat? According to the record, that threat was, and I quote, my trigger finger is itching. I dare you to move. I dare you to move. There was another incident. This cop shot a dog at a drug raid. There was an internal investigation. He lied about it, said he did not shoot the dog. Ballistics came back, showed that yes, he actually did shoot the dog, and then he changed his story. Well, after that investigation concluded, he was deemed to be untruthful. The disciplinary sergeant recommended Koo be terminated. But instead of doling out any punishment, his commanding officer dismissed the entire case for timeliness, saying it had dragged on for too long. Just 3 months later, after a recommendation to fire him, this cop, Stephen Koo, was promoted to sergeant. Who signed the promotion papers? This guy. He signed the promotion papers. That's your former police chief. He's now running, thinking about threatening to run for governor. Wow. Dina Doll, you're in this industry. You work in the legal profession. What are your thoughts about this case?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're bringing it to the attention because it's really an awful case. And I think it's a really good example of how the people here did everything right. You know, they filed the complaints, like you said, and there was an investigation internally. And it shows that, you know, people sometimes ask, why do we have so many laws? Why do we have so many regulations? It's because that even when we have these processes, things still, you know, can get corrupted because the commanding officer in this situation kept on dismissing the complaints even when they found them to be sufficient and even when he was being recommended to be fired. So it sounds like the department is also investigating the commanding officer, which they need to. And it shows that we need even more kind of safeguards in place because yes, you could have the one bad cop, but what if you have the one bad cop and then also, you know, the bad commanding officer? You know, there is no recourse then for people who really, yes, they want to be protected by the police, but also from the police. And where do they go? We've told them this is how you do it. But if they do it and they still can't get relief from it, it means, you know, we haven't done enough legally to put safeguards in place and make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen.
Sorry about that. Yes, okay. The police chief that I showed you, his name is James Craig. Now, remember, he has access to these records. And you said something very powerful. This doesn't happen just because of one cop. Now, here's the way I look at it. I'm talking about this criminal cop. That's what I believe he is. I believe he's a criminal cop. I believe he's a serial criminal. But I also believe that he's been protected by others that are criminals as well. Literally, you have the police sergeant involved in the investigation saying, I recommend termination. They actually moved forward to terminate. And 3 months after the recommendation to terminate based on his lying to other cops, they decide to give him a promotion. Now, how in the hell does that happen? And if a person is willing, if a police officer is willing to lie to other police, which I thought was obstruction of justice if I did something like that. If he's willing to lie to the police in an official investigation, you don't think he lies on police reports? You don't think he lies on common citizens? You don't think he lies on black folks that he thinks have no voice? But 85 complaints. And let me bring it back to a policy core, because the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act would have actually helped resolve this, because in the act, it mandates that you have a national registry for reporting officer complaints, which means in 2020, when the act was first introduced, if this would have been law back then, the world would have been able to see that there's an officer coup on a police force that has all of these complaints. He has more complaints than anybody in the history of the Detroit police. Unbelievable. So what happens now? I mean, can he be criminally charged with anything? Because at this point, they've taken him off the street, they put him on some kind of desk assignment, but he still has his rank, he still has his job, he still has his pay, he still has his pension.
You know, it may be more that he has some due process violations, because it sounds like he did some unlawful search and seizures on these people. How much of that was their consent? How much of that was their consent that was coerced? I think it would be maybe more civil charges against him. And I absolutely agree with your point about him lying. And we saw that also with Breonna Taylor, where the officers lied to the court when they tried to get that no-knock warrant. And I don't understand how, we say lawyers, we in society are like, we say they're so bad, but we have these standards. We can't lie to the court, right? Rudy Giuliani just got disbarred for that. But somehow police officers can lie in reports, and they just get some sort of, even if they're caught, maybe just some sort of internal punishment. I think that they should not be able to hold a badge, or there should be a much more significant thing, because if you're going to be in charge of making investigation reports, like you said, how can you have no consequences for lying?
Yeah, none whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the opposite of consequences, he received a promotion 3 months after he was deemed to be a lying ass cop. He got a promotion. Now, I'm not saying he was a lying ass cop. That's what they said about the guy. It's in the record. He was untruthful. He gets a promotion signed by the chief at that time. Okay, let me shift gears. There's another horrendous story. Cop insurrectionist. This is a problem. This is a real problem. Do you know how many police officers went to the US Capitol and committed an act of domestic terrorism? Do you know how many? No, you don't, because nobody does, but a lot of them did. We're still counting and figuring out how many were involved. But we do know of this particular cop insurrectionist who throws his son under the bus to justify his huge weapon stash. So there's a former Rocky Mount, Virginia police officer, a January 6th participant, Thomas T.J. Robertson, appeared in federal court Wednesday on accusations of having violated the conditions of his bond. So this person already has a bond, has conditions. He violates them according to the report. This federal hearing ended Wednesday morning without a ruling from the judge, who said his ruling would later come in the form of a written order after more time to weigh the following testimony and evidence. On June 30th, prosecutors filed a motion to revoke Robertson's bond after a search of his Ferrum home found firearms and explosive devices. Prosecutors contend Robertson violated the conditions of his release. Well, I would imagine so, damn it. You're talking about a guy has firearms and bombs inside of his house, and he's on probation. I mean, he's on bond, okay? During the Wednesday hearing, Robertson's son, Hunter Robertson, testified that he owned the M4 rifle that the FBI found in his father's home. It gets deeper. Prosecutor Elizabeth Alloy told District Judge Christopher Cooper that Hunter Robertson's testimony was inconsistent with statements made to the FBI when the gun was seized, but that she would not push the issue further for the moment because of other items such as a pipe bomb, a grenade, and silencers that were also found in the home. No, Madam Prosecutor, I need you to push it all. No, you need to get the son too, okay? That's obstruction. You need to get him lying in the official capacity of the investigation. Get him too. Don't be light on these folks just because there are other heavy things at play. Robertson's attorney, Mark Rowlands, contended that the grenade and the pipe bomb were items Robertson used to give training to other police officers, and that no issues had been raised regarding those items when federal authorities first searched his home and seized his guns in January. So understand what's happening here. You have a former police officer who committed an act of domestic terrorism. He gets caught, he gets a bond. He violates his condition of bond by having these weapons and bombs in his house. According to the attorney, federal authorities already went in his house and saw these bombs and did nothing to him. I believe that attorney. That doesn't mean what this individual did is not unlawful. It just means you have a deeper issue permeating in the legal justice system. So what does this former cop do? He doesn't take responsibility for his actions. He blames part of it on his son, getting him to change his testimony officially. And then he blames the rest of it on other cops that aren't even present. That's how he decides to handle this. Let's put up the picture. Yeah. The prosecutor stated, however, what those devices were for didn't matter. Simply possessing them was in violation of his bond conditions. This is a photo of Robertson. He's the man on the right, and the other, a former officer named Jacob Fracker, the man on the left side of the US Capitol on January 6th. Let me do this. I know there's a lot to this story, but we got some of those pictures. Okay. These are officers, police officers, who were involved in an act of domestic terrorism. Remember, at one point in their lives, they took an oath to protect and serve me and you. That's just a few pictures. There are a whole lot more. What is going on in the culture of policing to where this is acceptable behavior among themselves? Ms. Doll, what are your thoughts about this?
First of all, his arguments, of course, it's a violation of his bond. And so one of the comments his attorney makes also is, he will comply with anything in the future. You got his attention. And my thought on that was, defendants don't really usually get that right to decide when or not to comply. So it was a little bit of an entitled statement, I thought, on his part. But yeah, it is so deep. And the fact that we talked about these two stories together, right? The first police officer in Detroit, and then this in the insurrection. And we just really have to question, what is happening here with our police force and our military? Like, how embedded is this? But, you have to do it one case at a time. And this case is getting brought. I agree with you. The prosecutor should be kind of throwing the book if that son also committed perjury. And he did violate his bond. I imagine the judge will come back and show that. And his attorney's argument that, this is hard for him and isolation and all that kind of stuff. Welcome to being a defendant in the criminal justice system in America. You lose a lot of your rights. And you don't lose a lot of your rights, but it's not easy. And I feel like he has not come to terms with that from his attorney statements.
Well said. Let's also put up on the screen the former police officers we've been able to identify who committed an act of domestic terrorism that day as well. Look at them. That's your future of policing if you don't get this together. I'm talking to everybody in America. All right. We got more on the other side. Stick and stay is indisputable.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey. Hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Jank. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Such a big fan. Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
All right, welcome to Dr. Rashad Richard Indisputable. This is going to be quite interesting. I don't know if you can handle this much truth on any day of the week. The unrest inside of the black community and communities that support them. It's because these cops are not held accountable.
You have a family calling 911, and that family is expecting help, not expecting their loved one to be killed by the very people they pay to protect and serve them.
Did you ever notice a cop that you work with call any black person the N-word or target people because they were black? Nope. But we disagree that somehow police officers are not also subject to the same systemic biases and racism as any other level of law enforcement.
It sounds like for everybody's need who wants to crucify the cops without looking at it.
No, crucify bad cops, brother.
Of course,
cops.
we don't need the government to step into our lives mandating that we should be wearing a mask. You putting on a mask, Trey, is government intrusion. But you don't think the government telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body isn't government intrusion. Where does life begin?
You want to go there? I can read it to you, bro.
You seem very well prepared. Certainly more.
Of course, why would I not be well prepared? They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform throughout this country, so I won't stop, and you won't stop either.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Welcome back. It's indisputable. We got a lot of viewer comments. I'm going to read as many as I can. All right, thank you all for being so interactive. And remember to always join us on the YouTube page, subscribe there, Indisputable TYT. Follow us also on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Indisputable TYT, and hashtag Indisputable TYT so we can read your comments on air. And don't forget to stay after Ray Actions with Ray Vanna. That's after the show today. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be fire, all right? TYT member, Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon says, I just looked up the laws on a cop filing a false police report. If an officer is found guilty of false reporting, it can either be a misdemeanor or a felony. If they are found guilty of a misdemeanor, they can end up in jail for a maximum of 1 year, or they can be put on misdemeanor probation. If the false reporting is worse and the officer is charged with a felony, they will have a maximum of 3 years in prison or felony probation. That is correct. It has always been against the law to file a false police report. However, when is it enforced? Next TYT reporter says, this was the goal all along. The FBI warned about white supremacists taking positions of authority in police departments across the country. You're right, that report came out years ago. YouTube, super chat. Songs of sovereignty. Dr. Richie, so worth the wait. Much aloha. Thank you. Thank you for that. Ruthless Dragon, congratulations on the full-time gig. Well deserved, Dr. Rashad Richie, and thank you so much for being supportive. BC4L, I will never get used to how overtly cruel and specifically aggressive these officers are towards non-whites, especially black people. I'll never get used to it, and neither should anyone else. That's right, well said. No Noon Consequence says, I have not worked a single job in my life where I could have had 3 complaints against me without being fired, let alone 8, let alone 85. Those are workplace violations, okay? Just imagine, 85 workplace violations and you're still getting promotions. Signed by the chief, the executive of your company. Black Malibu Barbie says, thank you, Dr. Richie, for speaking truth to power. It is my pleasure, thank you. The artist says, hey, doctor, do you think you could do a story on the off-duty Maryland cop who put a gun on my cousin for simply waiting for the bus? Officer Damon T. Durant is his name. Well, shoot me an email, richie316@gmail.com, all right? Shoot me an email. Nicole Smith, and I'm sorry that happened to you, cuz. Nicole Smith, unfortunately, good cop has become the exception to the rule. Abolish qualified immunity, hashtag protect and serve, that's right. Macadella, JAA, thank you for that. EG, this is the best new show on YouTube. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. All right. Next story. Candace Owens. She just can't help herself. Now she has compared what conservatives are going through as the same dehumanization as what Jews in Nazi Germany went through. She says the same thing, the exact same thing. On her podcast on Wednesday, Candace Owens launched into an unhinged and unsubstantiated diatribe in which she claimed that conservatives are being dehumanized in the United States, much like Jews were in Nazi Germany. Where do I freaking start with insanity like this? Here's what she said during the podcast. During the Holocaust, the Nazis referred to the Jewish people as rats as another form of dehumanization, said Owens. I bring this up because right now in this country, in America, conservatives are being dehumanized. I'm gonna say that again. Conservatives right now in the United States of America are being dehumanized. That is not up for debate. Well, madam, it is up for debate. And will you please respond to my producers who have been requesting you to come and debate me? I would love to debate you on this topic or any other topic. As a matter of fact, I will be so fair. I will allow you to choose the topics for the debate. She goes on to say, the CDC said this is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated, said Owens. The idea is to make millions of people believe that conservatives are vermin. And of course, vermin is to be dealt with, right? Well, first of all, that's what you're saying, by the way. She goes on to say, that is why the Biden regime is stepping up or stepping to the plate to deal with us. Biden's government, like all evil regimes before it, is doing the population a favor. They're conquering misinformation. Guys, they're dealing with the vermin. They're gonna control the flow of information. In other words, they're going to brainwash the masses. Damn, that sounds awful. I mean, that sounds just as bad as what, I don't know, somebody like Ben Shapiro may have said. Remember what Shapiro said? Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. This is not a difficult issue. Ben Shapiro, Twitter. Or maybe this kind of sounds like rhetoric that Candace has said before, because remember, she's saying that people are dehumanizing conservatives. Here's what Candace Owens said about the late murdered George Floyd. We've turned George Floyd, a criminal drug addict, into an icon. We are promoting Satan's shoes to wear on our feet. We've got Cardi B named as Woman of the Year, but we're convinced it's white supremacy that keeps Black America behind. How stupid can we be? I got some other examples of how stupid you can be.
Isn't it crowding your country the fastest way to despoil it, to pollute it, to make it, a place you wouldn't want to live?
Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for and most of us don't like.
Well, say you're a cocaine dealer and you kind of look like one a little bit.
We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes our own country poorer and dirtier and more divided.
Do you understand, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way, you're smarter than I am, sure, but do you understand what the New York Times wants and the far left want? They want to break down the white Christian male power structure of which you're a part, and so am I. And they want to bring in millions of foreign nationals to basically break down the structure that we have.
We keep marrying other species and other ethnics and other.
Are you sure you're not suffering from some of the causes
Swedes,
of dementia right now?
See, the problem is the Swedes have pure genes.
But it's conservatives who are the victims. Dina Doll, come on now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, it's almost like, what can you say? It is so disturbing what she's saying, using the Holocaust, really. Yeah. I mean, and when I kind of delve a little bit deeper here, it seems like her main thing is trying to say how awful social media is. The fact that this is kind of not, conservatives no longer have a voice on social media. And it's interesting because her husband was named CEO of Parler in May. So to me, this seems like an advertisement for Parler. And she definitely did not disclose that conflict of interest in that segment. What better way to rile up potential Parler customers than tell them, hey, you're being dehumanized and you don't have a voice. And it's really too bad, though, that she does it in such a disgusting and dangerous way, by using the Holocaust. At the end of the day, there's sometimes it just comes down to money, right? And corruption and.
Yeah, I've seen what she used to say about Donald Trump before she figured out she could make money by promoting him. I remember commentary that she had when she was on the other side of the political ideology until she figured out how she could draw a lane for herself and start making money. I have a theory. I don't think Candace is a Republican. I don't think she's a Democrat. I think she's a moneycrat, and that is it. But she is a dangerous moneycrat in that she will go so extreme with her rhetoric, and she will be so insensitive with her verbiage. It hurts communities. It violates the trust, the common trust that people put into her. It's unfortunate that there are folks who are true believers in the rhetoric that she spews. But really, you have a whole lot of white bigots who pay her to say crazy things about all of the other races, including Black people, or especially Black people. Next story.
Speaking in Chinese, shut up. Speaking in Chinese is friendly. Shut up, you're rude. Speak English in Canada, rude as fuck. Who do I complain about? Shut up, you're rude. You are rude, go somewhere else. Who do I complain about for? Give me the number.
No, you can call our store number.
What's your store number? On the top of the receipt.
I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
I got a Throwback Thursday Karen for you. Maybe you've already seen this one on social media. This Karen being rude in front of her child, teaching her child the art of not having social responsibility or being nice and courteous or respectful to adults. And on top of that, being racist. That's the lesson she's teaching her son. Throwback Karen demanded that Asian employees only speak English in front of her. This was back actually in 2019. Here's some details. Facebook user Alan, who asked not to be identified, said he didn't see how the incident started, but that it appeared to have begun with a dispute over the handling of a return or exchange over the price of a product. Here's the rest of that video.
You want a manager to talk to me, you bring your manager here. If you want to talk to me, you bring your manager here, you idiot, or go speak Chinese with your other staff and talk to me somewhere else. Get him somewhere else. What the hell is going on? Does he start fights with all your people? Then get him in the back. That is rude. Shut up and get out of here, you idiot. Okay. That's rude. You know about what? You know about what? Things having triggered by only after speaking a different language, talking to me in front of your staff? That's pathetic. Get him out of here. It's rude. Shut up. Okay. Shut up. I'm part of police.
I feel so bad for that kid who is so calm because his mama done acted like this before. This is nothing new to him. What a horrible lesson for him to learn. Ms. Doll?
Yeah, I agree. The child, she acts as if he is less than her because he's speaking in a different language. You know, that hits close to home. I come from a family with multi languages and who some of them didn't speak English. And it's that sense that, you know, because his English maybe was not as good, or even because he was speaking in another language, and somehow that made her better, and she could assume, you know, all those really awful things about her. And it's that mentality that we've kind of been talking a lot on the show today of like not seeing the person, you know, not giving really respect to another person and some dignity. The fact of the matter is, it was none of her business what one employee wanted to say to another employee. Why, you know, whether or not he was speaking in English or not. And it's just a sad state that a human being can think they can treat somebody else like that.
Yeah, and obviously she's walking in her not only privilege, but she's walking in her racism, her bigotry. And what we've seen time and time again is that as soon as one of these Karens cannot put somebody in their place, they immediately go to a racist default. And they start to exhibit their bigotry. Now, I want to say this to everyone who was working in that store. They are really composed and they are being as courteous as can be in the face of this kind of racism. These individuals are human beings. These people have souls. These people have meaning. They have value. And the reason why I take the time to highlight Karens like this is because I want to show everyone how ugly it looks when you actually dehumanize somebody. This is what you look like. This is how it comes across. And maybe when you see others in that position, you would check yourself if you are ever close to showing that kind of disdain for another human being. We got more on the other side. This is Indisputable. Stick and stay.
I'm Nina Turner, and we are on the road to revolution, baby. sometimes people talk about the angry black woman, but I'm gonna tell you something. If you ain't mad as a mofo about what's going on here, something is wrong with you. When people ask me all the time, what are the lessons from 2020, is that progressives have to get more organized and we got to come together. We have to be as agile as neoliberals. The progressive movement has to understand that it's not just enough for us to have the right ideas. We are right on most of the ideas. We're not perfect, but we're 99% right because it is a humanitarian agenda, but we must get the power. We have to come together in a more unified way so that we utilize our power strategically to topple neoliberalism, and it's gonna happen.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking, and I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either, so feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
All right, welcome back. It's indisputable. Let me read some of these viewer comments. TYT member, Eileen, middle-aged dragon mama. I will pay big bucks to see Owens in the bullpen with you, Dr. Richie. We'll see if that happens. We're working on it. YouTube, super chat. Bernie, the Kiwi Dragon says, if Owens comes on your show, I will prepare the bucket of disinfectant and water because you are indisputably going to mop the bullpen floor with her. Oh, please make it happen. We're on top of it. I promise you we are. Jonathan Ondrasik. I hope I said that right. My apologies if I did not. Candice argues against herself on a daily basis. She does. She goes back and forth like two different people. I've seen it, literally. Verlis Page says, "Ooh, Candace, don't want that smoke, LOL." Amber Smith, I think conservatives don't need assistance from anyone. They are destroying their own party and killing off their base. They really are. Jank Zappa says, my wife is from Colombia. People say all sorts of racist things to her at work. Doesn't matter what job she has. They always find a way to insult her. She has had to quit multiple jobs. I'm sorry about that, brother. Keep pushing though, okay? Larry Harris, with the kid right there. Yep, with the kid right there. Name for Mars says, raising a racist the Karen way. That is an unfortunate reality of what's actually being done in that moment. Okay, Mitch McConnell continues to defy medical science by standing upright with absolutely no backbone. So Mitch McConnell is now saying he's perplexed. He has no idea why people are so hesitant to get the vaccination. He said, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's perplexed why so many people in the country still aren't vaccinated. The answer may lie in part with his own party. Yeah, the misinformation, the lies, the manipulation, the back and forth, there's more. Even as Republicans move toward being more publicly trusting of the vaccine and personally rejecting anti-vaccine rhetoric, which McConnell did vocally early on, many in the GOP have still been reluctant to confront one of the biggest culprits of vaccine hesitancy: misinformation being spread by members of their own party. Now remember, McConnell was this way, then he was that way. McConnell was swinging this way, then he was swinging that way. Here's some of that.
As a result of Operation Warp Speed, not one, not two, but 3 highly effective vaccines. And so I'm perplexed by the difficulty we have in finishing the job.
Well, allow me to provide some context for you, Senator. Here's another video.
And as soon as we get the vaccine, we're going to get out of this in a rapid fashion. And all I would say to government officials is let's get the vaccine out as soon as we can.
Some have both had the disease and the vaccine, but we should study that also because we would want to know, is the vaccine more dangerous or are you more likely to have serious side effects? And 1 dose may be enough, but also maybe 0 doses is enough.
0 doses is enough? Maybe, perhaps, according to you. There's more.
Have you been briefed by the CDC? Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's 1 person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
But now we're working very strongly with China on the coronavirus. That's a new thing that a lot of people are talking about. Hopefully it won't be as bad as some people think it could be, but we're working very closely with them and with a lot of other people in a lot of other countries, and we think we have it very well under control. The virus, they're working hard. Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true. But we're doing great in our country. China, I spoke with President Xi, and they're working very, very hard, and I think it's going to all work out fine.
McConnell is perplexed. He has no idea. He's scratching his head. Why is there this hesitancy? Ladies and gentlemen, we had a president of the United States that spoke to thousands of people by way of extension through the media, millions, and spoke like he was at a damn sports bar about serious stuff. Ms. Doll, can you help the senators out here? Why are people in his party not getting vaccinated?
The fact is McConnell wants it both ways. He wants to be the leader of the Republican Party, but he doesn't want to lead. And on this issue, he should be leading because it's not really just Republicans that are dying because of this misinformation. They've turned what should have been a routine decision into a complicated decision because this misinformation has really gotten out there and has questioned people thinking this vaccine is safe, and really good people are dying from it. And he's not doing nearly enough to combat the misinformation. He knows what's happening. The fact that Trump did this in secret is enough of what the Republican Party feels about this. The fact that he's unwilling to lead on this is really tragic for a lot of families out there.
Yeah, and it's almost like McConnell, he knows he's full of ish, right? He knows that. He knows he's taking positions contrary to positions he's taken in the past, but he does it with a straight face as if it is a joke, but he won't let anybody else in on it. Now, granted, McConnell is being aggressively political in almost everything that he's doing. I don't think McConnell has a core value system at all. I don't. I think he's trying to figure out who he is in a very Trump-dominated political atmosphere, and he really has no idea how to do it. I don't think he personally likes Trump. I think he believes that Trump has hurt the Republican Party, but because of what you just said, he has a failure of leadership. He does not know how to actually persuade, influence, guide, provide wisdom, context, and nuance. He's not that person, never has been that person. But here's the reality. For decades in this country, we've elected men and women who were not leaders at all. They were never leaders in the first place. This is exposing them for who they are, but they have always been exactly who we are exposing them to be right now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's really sad because the people that are being punished here is not the fellow congressmen in DC, but it's these Americans around the country who want to believe what they are hearing and are dying as a result of it. I can't imagine the number of people who that in their sickness wish that they hadn't been so questioning of the vaccine. And this is really only going to get worse. And the fact that he's still so reluctant, the fact that he's still so perplexed is a really bad sign. He should be much more aggressive. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot more Americans dying.
Very well said and very unfortunate as a reality in this country, but truth is sobering. There's another sobering truth. If you decide to start being racist and threaten teenagers, they may knock your ass out. That may happen to you. That is a possibility. White people built this country. A racist spewed slurs at a grocery store, got decked by a black teen, and he gets charged with a hate crime. Good. A white Chicago man faces hate crime charges after allegedly attacking a black 19-year-old who has autism inside of a grocery store bathroom after telling the teen, white people built this country. Philip T. Jort, an ex-Marine who now works as a security guard, was standing at a urinal inside the bathroom at Pete's Fresh Grocery Market when he allegedly began hurling racial slurs at the teen who was washing his hands. You see the picture. Now this is an ex-Marine. He's a current security guard, and he decided to become aggressive with a random teenage teen. Jort allegedly tried to prevent the 19-year-old from leaving the bathroom, that's kidnapping, and punched him in the stomach while continuing to yell racial slurs, the newspaper reports. The 19-year-old exited the bathroom after a struggle in which he punched Jort at least once, knocking him to the ground. I don't condone violence, but I do condone self-defense. And the only thing that's wrong with this story, other than the obvious, is that we don't have a person recording it. We do have the report. Here's more. Jordan then followed the teen out of the bathroom and continued to throw punches, but did not make contact, prosecutors say. After 2 off-duty police officers working security at the store intervened, Jordan called one of them a racial slur. Jordan later explained that he does not have a problem with all black people, just certain ones when they act a certain way, according to prosecutors. He also admitted to being intoxicated at the time of the incident. Hey, listen, don't let that liquid courage get you in trouble. So he was intoxicated, according to him. I believe him. I won't debate that point. But that only made him more of who he actually was. It gave him the freedom. He was able to release the barriers. And he sees, think about this, a random 19-year-old kid simply in the bathroom washing his hands, a kid with autism, who acted in self-defense. Now here's what I'm happy to report. The black kid wasn't arrested. The white man, the white racist male went to jail, got charged with a hate crime. This is how it should go. Obviously, racist people should not do these things. But when they happen, when the unfortunate reality happens, they should go to jail. And they should be charged with a hate crime when there's a clear indication that this was all racially motivated. It happened the right way. This is not the norm, though. This is abnormal. This is the anomaly. Ms. Doll, what are your thoughts about it, about this case?
You're right that it's great that he did get arrested, and he's going to be facing a class 4 felony in Illinois, which would punish him 1 to 3 years in jail, $25,000 fine, education, and the family would be able to sue also as a result of this. But it struck me too, we're talking about here an ex-Marine who had significant combat training. And the fact that he's kind of going after this 19-year-old is very disturbing. And also the judge agreed with you there. I don't know why defendants sometimes claim intoxication as a defense. I've heard this come up before and it never works. But the judge here said actually that was a truth serum. And thank goodness this is being prosecuted, and maybe this will at least change this one person. If indeed he gets some education training, maybe he will turn his life around. I mean, you could only hope.
Well, or maybe the ass kicking already changed his mind. Because I promise you, he's not gonna run up on random 19-year-old black kids anymore. He won't try that again. So I think he's already learned somewhat of a lesson. Would you not agree?
I absolutely agree. I wish we could have seen the fact that the 19-year-old actually knocked him down. And again, we're talking about an ex-Marine here. I thought, gosh, that teenager got some really good self-defense training.
Yeah. So once again, we highlight these dynamics of our culture, these societal norms, because we have to turn around the narrative. It should be normative that if you are fighting a black teenager or anybody, and you're launching racial slurs, you need to be charged with a hate crime. That enhances the crime. But then we have the ridiculousness in Utah of a 19-year-old college student who decided to crumple up a paper that said "back the blue." She gets charged with a hate crime for intimidating the police officer. No violence, no physicality. It's not even against the law in most states. It's just a really weird law there. But that's the game they play. So when you make an accomplishment or you push the needle in one arena, they come back and they say, "Oh no, we don't want you to have a hate crimes bill unless we have a hate crimes bill." They did the same thing in Georgia. Georgia passed a hate crimes bill 2 years ago, and the only way they could get it passed, I'm talking about Democrats, was to agree to allow the police to also get a hate crimes bill. The only way they would allow it to happen. Real interesting stuff. Ms. Doll, it has been wonderful, remarkable having you on Indisputable. How can people follow you? How can people check out your work?
Ask Dina Doll Ask Dina Doll 1 on Twitter. It was great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the bullpen is next. Stick and stay.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer health care, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny.
Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
All right, welcome back to Indisputable. I'm going to read some of these viewer comments. All right, we got a lot of them. I will read as many as I can. TYT member Craig Souffle says, my God, the dead has risen. Interesting considering McConnell, who's a polio survivor because of a vaccine. Hello. And I'm sure the March of Dimes is nowhere to be found on his big donor list. YouTube super chat, Neil Fox Com says, he doesn't like how some act. Who the hell is he to police someone's body? Yeah. Orb rumor. Dude wanted to make America great again by stopping a man from peeing while black. See how that worked out for him. Pumpkin Spice Dragon. I worry greatly about my child when he grows up. Hope he's not harassed. I hope the same. Name for Mars, Twitch. Just the ones who are uppity. That's the code that he was saying, yeah. Peachy Shari says, I've been drunk. I've never called someone a racial slur, drunk or sober. Alcohol doesn't make you racist. And that's the reason why you didn't say racial slurs when you were drunk, because you're not racist. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, I have Mr. Nate Hochman, conservative commentator, Publius Fellow at the Claremont Institute. We're gonna chop it up about a few things. Nate, good day, welcome to Indisputable.
Thanks so much, good to be here.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. We typically get right into it with these shows. I don't wanna presume what you think about bills like the Texas bill that would eliminate requirements for teaching the moral and ethical issues concerning the KKK. What are your thoughts about Senate bills like Senate Bill 3 out of Texas and others similar?
Well, look, if Texas was actually banning teaching that the KKK was morally wrong, I would certainly be opposed to that. Obviously, I think every American of sort of basic common sense and good moral character oppose teaching that KKK was not morally wrong. I think there's a lot of misinformation around a lot of these bills and a lot of paranoia and alarmism, not just around the Texas critical race theory bill, but around most of the bills that are banning critical race theory in public schools, particularly in K through 12. And this is one of them. So we can get into it. I'd be happy to sort of talk about exactly what's in the Texas bill if you'd like to. But to be clear, the Texas legislature was not banning teaching that the KKK was morally wrong. They removed the specific clause mandating the teaching that the KKK was morally wrong as they trimmed down the bill to get it to the Board of Education. But that's radically different than a lot of the misinformation that we're hearing about that right now.
Well, Nate, I'm gonna push back on that because you are incorrect. The bill itself, and you're conflating two different bills. One is the anti-critical race theory bill, which is quite different from Senate Bill 3. The anti-critical race theory bill isn't even a bill against critical race theory because the terminology critical race theory is not located in the Texas bill. That's number one. Number two, the Senate Bill 3 that we're talking about in relationship to civil rights, education, and the KKK does in fact say that teachers are not mandated to teach the KKK. But if they do teach these lessons, they cannot have deference in the teaching, which means they cannot provide a moral or ethical conclusion as to the curriculum that they are teaching. No difference in the teaching. Now, before I became a college professor, I was a high school educator. I was a high school teacher. I know what that means because there were certain topics that we were told we could not provide deference on the topic even though we could teach it. So literally the bill does, sir, say that you cannot teach it based on a moral principle. That's problematic, is it not?
Well, look, so there are real concerns to be had about the effects of overly broad language in the Texas bill and the bill, the banning critical race theory like it in red states throughout the country. It's probably not productive to quibble about technicalities, but it's not true that any part of the Texas legislation that we're talking about says that teachers can't draw moral conclusions about the KKK. There's nothing in the bill or any of the bills that were proposed that says anything like that. So I'm a little confused where you're getting that from.
Yeah, I need you to read the line that says they cannot provide deference to the teaching. I need you to read that line and understand what that line means in the statutory interpretation. As a matter of fact, Representative Hughes, who's a co-author of the legislation, said that language is also confusing to him as well, who was initially in support of it, still seems to be in support of it, but says the ambiguity in the language makes it problematic in the interpretation. The bottom line is, why are they messing with it in the first place? Just answer that question. Why are they messing with this? Okay, it looks like we lost you. Are you still there?
Okay. sure. That's a different question, but just to be clear, to answer the first point, I opened the last time.
All right, it's real choppy, man. It's really difficult to understand what you're saying. I really want to make sure we get your comment on record. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Let's try to figure out what's happening technically and bring you back on, all right? This is Indisputable. Stick and stay. Okay, welcome back. I think we have the technical issue resolved. We got Nate Hochman, who is talking to us about critical race theory, K through 12 education. So you were trying to make a point, brother, before the feed started getting choppy. Sure. What was the point you were trying to make?
Well, just that there are real concerns to be had about ambiguity, like the rep that you referenced was talking about. But that's different than saying what I think you were saying earlier, which is that there's anything in the Texas bill to suggest that teachers can't take moral conclusions or draw moral conclusions about the KKK. That's very different than the ambiguous language about deference, which again, we can talk about, but that is a much more sort of nuanced issue than the claim that's going around, which is that there's anything in the bill to suggest that teachers can't make moral claims about the KKK, which is not true as far as I understand.
Okay, well, your understanding is incorrect. Let me read to you the actual wording of the bill. Senate Bill 3 says teachers cannot be compelled to discuss current events or controversial issues of public policy or social affairs. And if they do, this is the part of the bill that I would like you to consider. If they do, they cannot give deference to any one perspective or the other. That means if they decide to teach the controversial issue of slavery, of Jim Crowism, of the KKK, according to Senate Bill 3, they cannot give deference to any one perspective. Sir, that's as clear as day. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand what deference means, especially in that context, correct?
Again, no, I just fundamentally disagree. We're talking about if you actually look at what these bills are talking about and how they're trying to deal, albeit imperfectly, how they're trying to deal with these really thorny issues of race and racism and how we're going to discuss and teach kids about American history. They're teaching MLK's letter from a Birmingham jail. They're teaching Frederick Douglass. There's specific provisions in the bill talking about mandating teaching the contributions of non-whites, people of color, minorities to American history, right? This is not the sort of all-out assault on any kind of nuanced view of American history that we're talking about. There are mandates about teaching Jim Crow and specifically how Jim Crow and the institution of slavery hurt black people in America. So the idea that, trying to avoid some of the more radical implications that some teachers have been teaching in public schools, which is what this bill is targeted at, is somehow removing any discussion of America's past sins is simply not true. If you actually look at the curriculum that we're talking about in the bill, we're not whitewashing history. We're trying to avoid the specific, more radical aspects that have been slipped in under the radar to teach kids, things that are associated with critical race theory, rather than, trying to teach this chauvinistic, perfect whitewash view of American history.
Yeah, you're wrong again. But let me ask you this. Do you believe that critical race theory is taught in K through 12 education? We lost him again? Are you still there?
No, we're back. You cut out for a sec. Sorry, what was that?
Okay. Do you believe that critical race theory is taught in K through 12 education?
Well, so this is a complicated issue, right?
No, it's not complicated, brother. That's what everybody's saying.
Well, okay, so let me explain to you what I'm saying here, right? Which is critical race theory. There's a point in the argument, a very narrow point, that critical race theory as a narrow legal doctrine is not taught in K through 12 because it's a doctrine that's pretty much confined to critical theory classrooms in undergraduate and graduate schools and law schools. But the concepts that are associated with critical race theory have absolutely trickled down into K through 12 in a really insidious and poisonous way, and they're being taught to our kids.
Explain
racial essentialism, et cetera. So these are big. So racial essentialism, one, right? Teaching that certain people are inherently oppressors, certain people are inherently victims based on their race, setting kids against each other as a result of their race, right? The entire concept of systemic racism is actually incredibly controversial, but taught as fact in a lot of these schools, right? That comes from critical race theory. The assault on colorblindness, on the idea that equality before the law actually isn't enough, right? Another very controversial topic that we can debate, but should not be taught as fact to our children. These things they come from critical race theory, and they're being taught to our kids. So critical race theory is having a profound effect on the state of our K through 12 education, even if the specific Richard Delgado critical race theory textbook isn't being taught in our schools. And that's what the line about critical race theory not being taught in K through 12 misses. It's an important nuance that needs to be.
So listen, man, I hate to keep saying this, brother, but you're wrong again. Critical race theory, by definition of theoretical frameworks, is not a fact. You understand that, right? It's a theoretical framework. It is an advanced theoretical framework that provides an analysis of contrast and comparison in order to come to a conclusion if you choose to, but it does not provide a conclusion for you. It is a theoretical framework by design and by definition. It is not in fact a conclusion. The second part of what you said about teaching that CRT somehow teaches that individuals are inherently racist or they are oppressors. Critical race theory completely de-emphasizes individual racist people and places emphasis on the institutions, policies, statutes, and laws, not people. So when you all say things like, well, it teaches that particular people are inherently racist or oppressors, CRT teaches completely the opposite of that and says you should not even pay attention to the individual racist person because they're not your real problem. Your real challenge is overcoming the systemic biases ingrained and contextualized in your everyday living that is related to policy, institutional norms, laws, statutes. So how do you all get away with saying something like that, which is completely contrary to the teaching of CRT?
So you're right, Rashad.
I know I'm right.
Critical race theory does de-emphasize. You're right on a narrow point. It de-emphasizes the individual.
I'm right on all of them, brother.
and it elevates over the individual the racial group identity, right? It is the exact contrary. It is the inversion of judging people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. It says what matters about you is not your actions as an individual. What matters about you is your racial identity, which is precisely why it is such an insidious and poisonous ideology, particularly when being taught to impressionable young children. So it de-emphasizes the individual, but it absolutely gives you conclusions to draw, right? That in and of itself is a conclusion, saying that what matters about you is not your individual actions, your individual character. What matters about you is your racial group identity. That is a conclusion. And it's a conclusion that is being taught to kids precisely because kids are not capable of grasping the whole complex, nuanced framework that might be taught as CRT in law school.
Well, yeah, and that's why critical race theory is not taught to K through 12 students, period. It's not taught. It was.
So I just explained, I did just explain though why aspects of CRT are being taught.
Nah, that's not CRT though. See, I can't say you're teaching qualitative comparison, right? Or qualitative research when you're not. Qualitative comparison and qualitative research is typically in a PhD level course. You can't say, well, because you're comparing two things, that makes it qualitative research. That's not what it is if it's not what it is. You have said on my show, well, it's not critical race theory, but then you say, but some of the elements are critical race theory. That actually makes it not critical race theory. That's my point to you. CRT is specifically and precisely defined by designation. So when you say, well, this is critical race theory, and then you say, but it's really not, well, you just proving my point. It is not critical race theory was being taught in K through 12 education. And the real assault is actually on the teaching of the dogmatic, chaotic, and perverted history that this country has had with race relations.
Right. Okay, but the difference between qualitative research and critical race theory is that the concepts we're talking about, the assault on color blindness, the racial essentialism, the teaching that your racial group identity matters.
Help me understand.
The idea that equality, the entire concept of equity is based on the idea that race neutral equality before the law is actually not enough, and that therefore you need to treat people differently based on the color of their skin. Certain privileges should go to people based on the color of their skin if they're the part of a purportedly oppressed group, and certain disadvantages should go to people if they're white. I mean, this is what we saw in the battle over critical race theory in Loudoun County, Virginia, right? You had certain positions that were only open to students who are black, and they were not open to white students. That is the definition of an assault on color blindness. You're not getting judged for the position based on the content of your character. You're getting judged for the position primarily based on your racial identity. That's why this is so poisonous. And just to finish the point though, that concept only exists because of critical race theory. It is specific to critical race theory. It is something that was innovated by the original critical race theorist textbooks. So it's not just qualitative analysis, it is critical race theory.
So first of all, the idea that systems are biased existed before CRT. CRT was somewhat formalized in 1970. It was massively formalized in the 80s, but it has been around decades before that. So no, critical race theory is not the reason why people look at systems as an analytical core for disenfranchisement or for outcomes that are unequal. But let me go to a quote that you guys like to say a lot. Judge by the content of your character and not by the color of your skin. Our dear brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that. Do you know what else he said in that speech?
He said a lot of things in that speech. I'm assuming you're gonna tell me a specific.
You ever listen to it?
Of course, yeah.
Do you know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did not speak of America as a great euphoria? He was not talking about this is what America currently is. He was talking about this is a goal. This is something to look forward to, but he was not talking about it from context of the present era that he was living in. Another part that you all conveniently like to not say is that Dr. King also said that in order for black people in America to have equity, he called it genuine equality, they need to have a basic income. Every black person needs to have a basic income in order to reach the economic floor so that they can compete in the economy. Now, That to me sounds like you would disagree with it, correct? If somebody said that today, if a politician said that today, would you agree or disagree with it?
Yeah, no, I absolutely freely admit I disagree with MLK on a lot. But the basic point that has to be responded to, right, is that no one is arguing for a representation of America as a utopia or a euphoria, I think was the word that you used. So on that point, MLK and all of the conservatives who are pushing anti-CRT bills are in complete agreement. I mean, you cannot find one person who says we should teach that America has never done anything wrong, that is perfect, that our history is perfect. That's not what anyone is trying to do. And you can see that again in the fact that the Texas state legislature, the Republicans writing the anti-CRT bills, also included mandatory teaching of Frederick Douglass's writing on the brutality of chattel slavery. They wouldn't have included that if they were trying to portray America as utopia. So again, there's plenty of things that I disagree with MLK on, certainly, but that is not one of them, and that's not one that I think any conservative in the American mainstream would disagree with.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because some of the Republicans decided, or the moderates actually, decided to ensure that other elements were part of the bill. And politicians do this a lot, brother, and you've been around long enough to know that anytime they're presenting a bill that may be distasteful, that may be rejected by many, they put in a little something in the bill where they could hang their hat on. I'll give you an example. We've talked a lot about voter rights and voter restrictions in the United States, legislatures passing these various bills. Well, Republicans in Georgia, they did something very similar. They said, well, we're actually increasing access to voting, even though they're decreasing access to voting. And the way they did it, brother, was they put in the bill a mandate that all 159 counties had to do at least some early voting, when before it was just up to the counties. But then they restricted how many, which decreased the number of early voting opportunities for metropolitan counties where a bunch of black folks lived. So they limited voting for black people de facto, and they enhanced voting for rural areas through this legislation. So they could say, we expanded it for everybody, but they did not. They decreased it for the crowd, for the demographic that would have in fact voted against their political interests. So you always have these nuances in bills. Here's my thing with you, man, and I appreciate you being on the show and talking openly about it. You don't think that is ironic that after decades of critical race theory being an advanced theoretical framework, that the only time when you all started running with it as a great evil is after former President Donald Trump said it was? You don't find that ironic? Why was this not a thing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah, no, that's not ironic at all. I mean, this is something Republicans and conservatives should have been paying attention to 20 or 30 years ago. But I am certainly no stranger to being critical of the Republican Party. In this case, Donald Trump actually kicked the Republican Party's butt into gear, and they finally did something about it. But it has been an issue for decades, and they haven't done anything about it. And Trump led the way on this. I think that's a good thing. You disagree, but it is absolutely true that Trump was the innovator here, certainly.
Yeah, man, he told y'all what to do. He told y'all how to jump. Y'all said how high. That's what happened.
Sure. No, they put it. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: do you believe systemic bias and systemic racism actually exist?
I think systemic bias exists because I think biases, in-group and out-group biases, are a natural feature of the human condition.
Including racism.
Like people that are like us. Well, systemic racism, I do not think exists.
How can you agree that systemic? First of all, your social science is jacked up. If you believe that social bias exists, you mean to tell me that the only bias that does not exist is the bias of racism?
Well, okay, let me ask you this, because systemic racism means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, I'm genuinely not trying to be clever here, but when people say systemic racism, the definition is often incredibly vague. I disagree that systemic racism exists in the definition that I've heard it used in a lot, which is that there are certain institutions in American life today that are actively racist. I disagree with that. Is that your definition of systemic racism?
No.
Or are you operating off of a different one?
No, systemic racism doesn't require intentional racism. It simply requires the result of inequity based on a racial dynamic. So what you do is you analyze the data. So you analyze the conclusion, because usually the systemic racism that we're talking about is implicit bias. It is not aggressive or hyper bias. It is implicit bias based on a racial core. And you have to agree when you actually analyze the data that all of these outcomes that are rooted in inequity, they come from somewhere, brother. And if you can say that biases exist, you cannot then create an immunity for racism.
Right, so if your definition is something creates disparities in outcome between groups.
Racism, yeah, it does. Racism is part of it.
But that is not racism as we've traditionally understood it. It's a transformation of the definition of racism, and by that definition, every policy passed in every society in the history of human civilization would be racist, because there is not a policy in the history of the human race that has had an effect that was equal across all groups and all group outcomes.
Sir, it doesn't mean that all, brother. It doesn't mean that all policies.
If you ban murder, for example, there is going to be a massive disparity in the amount of men who are arrested for murder and the amount of women who are arrested for murder. That's not discrimination against men, though.
I really wish I had a whole lot more time. I'm getting the rap signal. Let me just break down equity in this way. Look at it like a football team. You got two opposing teams. They're both told all they got to do is play hard and win the game. That's it. They know the rules, basically. They've trained, and you have your crowd. Your crowd, that's your media. You're spectators, right? And you're playing this game. You're competitive. You're winning. Last quarter, 1 second left, you're up by 50 points. You're winning the game. There's no way the other team can come back and beat you. And before the game is over, half a second left, news is revealed that the opposing team inherited 100 points before the game even started. It looked fair. It had the optical illusion of fairness. You were equipped to play the game at the speed of the game. But what you didn't know is that you were competing in a game where one group of individuals already inherited the winning points. How do you solve that issue of inequity? That's the issue. Brother, I appreciate you being on the show, man. I just want to drop that. Think about it, come back next time, and you can argue and debate me on it, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me, appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of this planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.